Connecting the world's data. This is Newsstream.
Welcome to Neural Pulse, your daily AI briefing. Okay, so let's unpack this. Usually on this show, we're deep in the weeds on algorithms, transistors, the future of computation. We're always asking, what can AI do?
Right, the capabilities.
Exactly. But today we're asking a more fundamental question. What environment is AI actually operating in? We're zooming out pretty dramatically to look at the structural foundation.
The tectonic plates, really.
Yeah, the tectonic plates of geopolitics, economics, and warfare that will decide where advanced tech, where investment, and honestly, where risk is going to land in the next year. We're analyzing this comprehensive global risk report from mid-December 2025, and it's pointing to some serious seismic shifts.
That's absolutely right. Our mission for you today is to unpack this collision of opposing narratives. And it's happening across all these different domains, military, cyber, even market psychology.
And we're not just reading headlines.
No, not at all. We're explaining the context. The key takeaway for you, the listener, is to understand not just what happened, but how the global rules of engagement are changing. They're becoming far more volatile and interconnected.
And those connections are frankly surprising. We're going to look at why the legendary made-in-Germany industrial engine is grinding toward, a historic halt.
And how a terrifyingly sophisticated form of electronic warfare is suddenly targeting civilian air travel and not in a war zone.
And then there's this idea of luxury shame in China, which tells us so much more about global recession psychology than, any stock chart ever could.
Let's start right there with that sophisticated threat, the electronic battlefield.
Okay, so we're starting with the weaponization of the electromagnetic spectrum, GPS attacks. But what's so shocking here is the location. We're talking about critical civilian infrastructure miles away from any active conflict.
And what's truly fascinating here is the sheer scale of it and the technical sophistication of the events they're seeing in India. Over the past couple of years, India's major airports.
And we're talking about Delhi's Indira Gandhi International, right? IGIA. One of the busiest hubs in the world.
Exactly. They've reported a massive 1,951 incidents of GPS interference, and the frequency just exploded in the second half of 2025.
And the report is really clear on this point. This isn't the old school clumsy threat of jamming. Jamming is just noise, right?
Yeah, jamming is the technological equivalent of just shouting loudly to drown someone out. It blasts noise on a frequency to make the signal unusable. Simple.
But this is spoofing. Can you just break down why that is so much more dangerous?
Spoofing is it's next-level electronic warfare. It means some hostile entity is broadcasting false signals that look completely real. They perfectly mimic the genuine satellites.
So it tricks the plane.
It tricks the aircraft's navigation system into believing the plane is somewhere it is absolutely not. In Delhi, we saw commercial airliners on approach to the runway showing coordinates that were wildly inaccurate.
How inaccurate are we talking?
Up to 60 nautical miles off their actual location.
60 miles? I mean, think about that. If a pilot is relying on that digital navigation in low visibility or fog, that could be catastrophic. What does it even take to pull off an attack like this? And why would you target civilian planes?
Well, this raises two very profound and frankly worrisome questions for global security. First, the technology required is immense. To spoof a system like that, you need to know the complex timing codes, the orbital mechanics, the cryptographic keys.
This is state-level stuff.
This is state-grade spoofing tech. Until now, we've really only seen it around active high-intensity conflict zones, like in Ukraine or the Middle East. Seeing it used on this scale against civilian Indian infrastructure suggests one of two things. Either a state actor is engaging in a very high-level gray zone attack,
aimed at economic sabotage, basically. Disruption without firing a shot.
Precisely.
Right.
Or, and this is maybe even more concerning for the future, that these advanced electronic warfare tools are rapidly becoming cheap, modular, and accessible.
So non-state actors could get their hands on it.
Exactly. And if this tech gets democratized, the profound vulnerability of our entire society, which is so dependent on GNSS for everything from banking to logistics, it's just completely exposed. It demands a radical rethink of our defenses.
That's a huge structural threat, and it flows right from the invisible to the visible. So let's shift from the electromagnetic spectrum to the physical gray zone conflict in East Asia. I'm talking about the high-stakes confrontation between China and Japan.
The report details a really dangerous core event. It happened near the Okinawa-Miyako Strait. A Chinese J-15 naval fighter jet repeatedly locked its fire control radar, the FCR, onto a Japanese F-15 that was scrambling in the area.
And for our listeners, we need to be really clear about what an FCR lock-on means. This is not just a warning signal, is it?
No, it's the ultimate hostile prelude. FCR lock-on is the process where the radar actively tracks a target to get a precise firing solution. It is the step you take immediately before you launch a missile.
So it's a simulated attack.
It's a simulated kill.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this was done repeatedly, deliberately, near that critical strait, which is a key access point for both the U.S. and Japan in any Taiwan scenario, it suggests this was a calculated strategic decision. The Chinese carrier group, the Liaoning, was making a very explicit point.
And then came the narrative battle. This is where the information warfare, or what some people call cognitive warfare, really kicks in. Japan protested, calling it a dangerous and regrettable act.
And the immediate counter-narrative from Beijing was just textbook. They rejected the protest completely. They counterclaimed that Japan was the provocateur, that Japan intruded on their training area. They shifted the entire argument.
So they moved the focus away from the physical act, the radar lock, to the context.
Exactly. They moved it to Japan's historical monitoring activities in the region. So the goal isn't necessarily to win the physical fight, but to win in the global court of public opinion.
Which is a core part of their strategy, right?
Precisely. This is a core component of China's three wars: strategy, psychological, legal, and public opinion warfare. They pivot the international conversation away from their own aggressive actions and frame it around Japan's historical actions, often bringing up remnants of militarism.
And the aim is to persuade everyone else that Japan is the one escalating things.
Exactly. They transform themselves from the aggressor into the victim or the defender. It creates ambiguity where there was none. And that ambiguity is an incredibly powerful tool.
A powerful example of how facts get filtered through narrative. Okay, let's make a very sharp turn now, away from geopolitics and into the economy, because the report paints a really grim structural picture of the collapse of the post-war German economic model. And it's all symbolized by the crisis at Volkswagen, the ultimate made in Germany.
This is so much more than a corporate downturn. I mean, this is the deindustrialization of Europe's core happening in real time. The details are staggering. VW management proposed closing at least 3 domestic German factories.
Which has never happened.
Never been proposed in the company's 87-year history. And that's alongside massive layoffs and a demand for a 10% across-the-board wage cut.
That's just a nuclear option. The IG Metal Union must be furious. They're threatening an indefinite strike.
Which would paralyze the entire sector.
So what are the structural forces breaking this model? It can't just be bad luck.
No, the structural failure is this painful combination of 2 long-term factors. First, the catastrophic loss of the Chinese EV market. It was crucial for them.
Right. VW used to sell tons of high-margin combustion cars in China to pay for its high-cost German labor.
And now local competitors like BYD are just building better, cheaper electric vehicles that dominate that market. That profit engine is gone.
And the second factor, the energy piece.
Yes. The second factor is the persistent high energy costs across Europe after the Ukraine war. Germany's industrial model is built on cheap Russian gas and high-value exports. Suddenly, it has neither. Their production margins are choked. They can't compete on cost anymore.
The market's assessment must be brutal. How is the financial world reacting?
Investors are basically signaling that the German brand premium is dissolving. VW stock is down nearly 30% year-to-date. And in a really symbolic move, the market even downgraded its subsidiary, Porsche AG.
Oh, wait.
They booted it out of the main German DAX index, that's their blue-chip market indicator, like the Dow Jones, and shoved it into the mid-cap MDAX. That downgrade is this stinging symbolic vote of no confidence. The world no longer believes the German industrial model can sustain premium valuations.
From an invisible economic collapse in Germany, let's look at an invisible psychological collapse in China. It's reflected in these fascinating dual trends in global markets. One is driven by just extreme confidence, and the other by a kind of psychological recession.
Let's start with that confidence. We saw Bitcoin, BTC, have a pretty painful adjustment. It fell below the $90,000 mark after peaking at $126,000 in October.
And that was part of a broader risk-off mood, right? Linked to valuations in AI and tech stocks.
It was. But Strategy, the company we used to know as MicroStrategy, sent a clear signal that, to them, this is just long-term noise. They doubled down.
So they're still buying.
Absolutely. Strategy continued its long-term accumulation strategy without even hesitating. They bought another 10,645 BPC, which is about $980 million worth. Their total holdings are now over 670,000 BTC.
Wow.
And this isn't just a corporate balance sheet move. It is profound institutional certainty. They are using volatility as a buying opportunity, viewing Bitcoin not as a speculative asset, but as digital gold, a non-state reserve asset.
But couldn't you argue that this is just confirmation bias? Are they predicting the future or just betting so big that they can't back out now?
Well, that is the core debate. Their entire strategy relies on the thesis that Bitcoin's structural scarcity, its fixed supply, will inevitably overcome any short-term market stress, whether it's geopolitical or economic. They're banking on the macro-structural failure of sovereign currencies, not the success of this current bull market.
A very compelling long-term argument. Now, for the flip side of that psychology, the luxury plunge. Giants like LVMH and Kering are seeing their stocks fall dramatically. And it's tied to this social phenomenon in China called luxury shame.
This is a major structural shift in consumer behavior that I think the West is really struggling to absorb. Amid deep economic uncertainty, you have the real estate crisis, high youth unemployment, wealthy and middle-class